My name is Sasha, and I am 30 years old. To my family, I am a struggling virtual assistant who lives in a cramped studio apartment and barely makes rent. To the rest of the world, I am a ghost strategist. I fix problems for Fortune 500 CEOs and politicians that they do not want the public to know about. When a tech billionaire says something stupid on a podcast, I am the one who writes the apology speech. When a company needs to restructure without panicking the stock market, I am the one who draws the map. I keep my life private because silence is expensive. That afternoon, as the sun set over the Manhattan skyline, I looked around my 4-bedroom penthouse. It was quiet. It was peaceful. My phone buzzed again. It was another text from my father this time. Just to clarify, Sasha, do not try to show up at the back door. The Grand Estate has strict security and we do not want a scene. The irony was delicious. My father did not know that the Grand Estate had gone into foreclosure 6 months ago. He did not know that a shell company called SH Holdings had purchased the property for $12 million in cash. And he certainly did not know that SH Holdings stood for Sasha Hamilton. Technically, my parents were telling the landlord not to come to her own building. I placed my phone on the marble kitchen island and opened my laptop. A notification popped up from my bank. A wire transfer of $5 million had just cleared. It was the final payment from Elijah Sterling, the tech mogul and philanthropist, for managing his Senate campaign strategy. I was about to close the laptop and order takeout when my encrypted work phone rang. The caller ID said Executive Office of Elijah Sterling. I picked up. Ms. Hamilton, good evening. This is Marcus, Mr. Sterling's personal aide. We are reviewing the itinerary for tonight. Mr. Sterling is only attending this anniversary party in Atlanta because you mentioned your parents would be hosting it. He wants to discuss the third quarter projections with you in person. Are you on your way to the venue? I paused. I looked at the text message from my mother on my personal phone. Don't come. Only elites are invited. I smiled a cold, sharp smile that would have terrified my enemies. Tell Mr. Sterling I have been detained, I said smoothly. My family has informed me that I am not elite enough to attend. I will not be there. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Marcus spoke. Understood, Miss Hamilton. Mr. Sterling will be very interested to hear that. Should we cancel his appearance? No, I said. Let him go. Let him ask for me. I want to see how they handle it. I hung up the phone and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Below me, the city lights were starting to flicker on. It reminded me of why I built this wall between my real life and my family. They did not just underestimate me, they actively despised me. My mind drifted back to last week. The memory was still fresh, and it stung more than I wanted to admit. It was Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house in the suburbs, a house they could barely afford to heat. I had arrived wearing a simple gray, oversized hoodie and leggings. It was cashmere and cost $800, but to them it looked like gym clothes. I sat at the end of the table picking at dry turkey while my brother-in-law Hunter held court. Hunter was white, 32 years old, and worked at a hedge fund called Apex Capital. He was the type of man who used words like synergy and hustle, but never actually did any work. He was wearing a suit that was a little too tight and a watch that was a little too shiny. So Sasha Hunter said loud enough for the entire table to hear. I was talking to the office manager at my firm. We are looking for a new coffee girl. You know someone to run lattes, wipe down tables? It pays $15 an hour. I think it would be a big step up from whatever freelance typing you are doing. My mother, Linda, laughed. She covered her mouth with a napkin, but her eyes were cruel. Oh, Hunter, that is so generous of you to offer. Sasha, you should take it. You need a real job with benefits. You are 30 years old. It is embarrassing to tell my friends my daughter is an assistant. I slowly cut a piece of potato. I do not need a job, Hunter, I said quietly. My freelance work is going fine. My sister Chloe scoffed. She was sitting next to Hunter scrolling through Instagram. She was 26 and beautiful in a plastic curated way. She tapped her long acrylic nails on the table. "Fine," she says. "Mom, look at the bag Hunter got me for my birthday." She lifted a bright orange Hermes Birkin bag onto the table. It sat there like a trophy. "It is a Birkin," Chloe squealed. "It cost $20,000. Hunter says it is an investment." My father Byron leaned in, his eyes wide with greed. 20,000. Hunter's son, you must be killing it at the market. Hunter adjusted his tie, looking smug. We had a killer quarter, just leveraging assets and maximizing returns. Nothing too complex for you guys to worry about. I looked at the bag. From 5 feet away, I could see the stitching was uneven. The hardware was too brassy. It was a fake. A good fake, but definitely not worth $20,000. Hunter had probably bought it for $200 on Canal Street and told Chloe it was real. I saw something else too. Hunter's phone was sitting on the table face up. A message flashed across the screen. "Urgent. You need to pay the VIG by Monday. Tony is losing patience." Hunter snatched the phone up quickly, his face going pale for a split second before he forced a smile back on. I took a sip of water and watched him. He was not a financial genius. He was a gambler. And he was drowning. Later that evening, while Chloe was taking selfies with her fake bag in the hallway, I overheard Hunter talking to my parents in the kitchen. I stood in the shadows of the dining room listening. Bored with the market returns, Hunter was saying, his voice low and persuasive. "I have an exclusive opportunity. It is a private equity fund reserved for senior partners, but I can get you in. The returns are 40% monthly, but you need liquid cash." My father sounded hesitant. "We do not have that kind of liquid, Hunter. The retirement accounts are locked. Use the house equity," Hunter said. "Take out a second mortgage. Interest rates are low. You give me the cash, I double it in 3 months, and you pay off the mortgage and keep the profit. It is free money, Byron. Do you want to retire rich, or do you want to keep scraping by?" I felt a knot form in my stomach. He was pitching them a Ponzi scheme. He was going to take their house to pay off his gambling debts. I wanted to walk into that kitchen and scream. I wanted to tell them that I had just closed a deal worth more than this entire neighborhood. I wanted to save them. But then my mother spoke. "We should do it, Byron. Think about the anniversary party. We need the money to make it look spectacular. We have to show everyone we are elite. Besides, we do not want to end up like Sasha, do we? Alone and poor." My hand froze on the doorframe. Alone and poor. That was what they thought of me. I walked out of the house that night without saying goodbye. I drove my beat-up Honda Civic around the corner, parked it, and got into my chauffeured SUV that was waiting 2 blocks away. Back in the present in my penthouse, I looked at the clock. It was 7 p.m. The party at the Grand Estate was starting. Hunter was probably there right now, wearing his fake watch, smiling at my parents, and waiting for Elijah Sterling to arrive so he could pitch him a scam. My phone buzzed again. It was the security system notification from the Grand Estate. As the owner, I had access to every camera in the building. I opened the app. On my laptop screen, the ballroom appeared in high definition. I saw my mother in a gold sequined dress that was too tight. I saw my father puffing on a cigar. I saw Hunter looking nervous, sweating under the chandeliers. And then I saw the front doors open. The room went silent. Elijah Sterling walked in, surrounded by his security detail. He looked like a king entering a peasant village. My mother rushed forward, her face beaming with desperate pride. "Mr. Sterling," she practically shrieked. "Welcome." I sat back on my sofa and watched. The show was about to begin, and for the first time in my life, I held the remote control. I sat in the silence of my penthouse for a long time after watching the live feed of my family. My mother's voice from that text message echoed in my mind, telling me I was not elite enough, telling me I would ruin the aesthetic. For years, I had played the role they assigned me, the struggling daughter, the failure, the charity case. I wore the oversized hoodies and the scuffed sneakers because it made them feel superior. It made them feel comfortable. If Sasha was doing poorly, then they must be doing well by comparison. But looking at Hunter sweating through his suit on that screen, and seeing the desperation in my father's eyes, I realized something. The game had changed. They were not just mean anymore. They were in danger. And by extension, they were a liability to me. I stood up from the sofa and walked to the wall-length mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. No makeup, hair tied up in a messy bun, a gray t-shirt that had a small hole in the collar. This was the Sasha they knew, but it was not the Sasha who commanded rooms full of senators and tech giants. It was time to let the mask fall. I pulled out my encrypted work phone again. I did not call Elijah Sterling. I dialed a number that did not have a name saved in the contacts, only a single binary code. It rang once. "Go ahead, Sasha." The voice on the other end was deep and distorted. This was David, the head of my private forensic accounting team. We called them Team Alpha. They were the ones who found the hidden offshore accounts during the Senate hearings last year. "David," I said, my voice steady and cold, "I need a full autopsy on a hedge fund called Apex Capital. It is run by a man named Hunter Davis." There was the sound of typing on the other end. Fast, rhythmic keystrokes. "Hunter Davis." David repeated. "Your brother-in-law." I did not ask how he knew. David knew everything. That was why I paid him $10,000 a month as a retainer. "Yes," I replied. "He is currently pitching a private equity opportunity to investors at the Grand Estate. He claims 40% monthly returns using an algorithmic high-frequency trading strategy." David scoffed. 40% monthly. "That is mathematically impossible, Sasha. Even the best quant funds on Wall Street do not hit those numbers consistently." "Exactly," I said. "I want you to dig deep. I want to know where the money is actually going. I want to know who his investors are. And I want to know how deep the hole is. I need a full dossier sent to my secure server by 7 p.m. tonight." "Consider it done," David said. "Do you want us to alert the SEC?" "Not yet," I said, watching the screen where Hunter was now shaking hands with a local real estate developer. "I want to see the evidence first. If he is just incompetent, that is one thing. If he is criminal, that is another. I am going to the party to deliver the verdict myself." I hung up the phone. The investigation had begun. Now I had to prepare the executioner. I walked into my bedroom. To the naked eye, it looked like a standard master suite. Minimalist furniture, neutral colors. But I walked over to the large abstract painting hanging on the far wall. I pressed a hidden biometric scanner disguised as a light switch. With a soft hydraulic hiss, the wall panels slid open. Behind it was not just a closet. It was a vault. This was where the real Sasha lived. Rows of tailored blazers from Armani and Balmain, shelves lined with Louboutin heels in every color, handbags that cost more than my parents' cars. This was the armor I wore when I went to war in the boardroom. My family had never seen this room. They never would have believed it existed. I ran my fingers along the fabrics. Silk, cashmere, velvet. I needed something specific for tonight. I was not going there to blend in. I was not going there to be the dutiful daughter. My mother had said only elites were invited. I was going to show her what an elite actually looked like. My hand stopped on a garment bag at the very back. I unzipped it slowly. It was a vintage Versace gown from the 1995 archival collection. It was not black. It was not navy. It was red. A deep, visceral blood red that looked like liquid danger under the recessed lighting. It had a structured bodice that looked like armor, and a slit that went up the thigh sharp enough to cut glass. I pulled it out. This was it. This was the dress of a woman who did not ask for permission. This was the color of war. I spent the next hour transforming. I went into the bathroom and turned on the steam shower. I scrubbed off the scent of my apartment, the scent of the sad little freelancer they thought I was. I used the imported Moroccan rose oil body wash. I sat at my vanity and took down my hair. I flat ironed it until it was sleek and straight, falling down my back like a curtain of black silk. I applied my makeup with the precision of a surgeon. Sharp-winged eyeliner, a contour that highlighted my cheekbones, and finally a matte red lipstick that matched the dress perfectly. When I stepped into the gown and zipped it up, I looked in the mirror. The girl in the gray hoodie was gone. Staring back at me was a predator, a ghost strategist who controlled the board from the shadows. I put on a pair of diamond stud earrings, real ones, 4 carats each, and slipped on my black stiletto heels. I checked my watch. 6:55 p.m. My phone pinged. A single secure email from Team Alpha. The subject line read, Apex Capital Forensic Audit Priority 1. I picked up the phone, my heart rate not even elevating. I was used to bad news. I dealt with crises for a living. But as I opened the PDF file and scrolled through the executive summary, I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The graphs were a sea of red. Apex Capital was not a hedge fund. It did not have a brokerage account. It did not have a trading algorithm. It was a classic Ponzi scheme. Hunter was taking money from new investors to pay off the interest for the old investors. And the money he was skimming off the top was being funneled into online gambling sites and luxury car leases. But that was not the part that made me stop breathing. I scrolled to the bottom of the document where David had listed the primary equity holders, the victims who had the most money currently tied up in this sinking ship. At the top of the list was a transfer dated 3 days ago. Amount: $500,000. Source: Second Mortgage Lien. Property address: 142 Maple Drive. I stared at the address. It was my parents' house, the house I grew up in, the house they had just leveraged to the hilt. Hunter had not just convinced them to invest, he had convinced them to liquidate their entire life savings and mortgage their home to fund his gambling addiction. I looked up at the live feed on my laptop. I saw my mother laughing, throwing her head back, holding a glass of champagne. She looked so happy. She looked so proud. She had no idea that she was already homeless. She had no idea that the man she was celebrating was the man who had just signed her financial death warrant. I closed the laptop with a snap. I grabbed my clutch bag and headed for the private elevator. My mother told me not to come because I would embarrass her. But as the elevator doors closed, sealing me in with my reflection, I knew the truth. I was not going there to embarrass her. I was the only person on Earth who could save her from total annihilation. The ghost strategist was on her way, and she was bringing the receipts. The drive to the Grand Estate took 40 minutes. It was enough time for the sun to fully set and for the property to light up like a beacon of wealth against the dark Georgia sky. As I turned onto the private road, the gravel crunched beneath the tires of my 10-year-old Honda Civic. The car rattled and hummed, a stark contrast to the line of Bentleys and Mercedes that were gliding smoothly toward the valet stand. I could see the mansion in the distance. It was magnificent. Stone pillars rose 3 stories high, and the windows glowed with the warm invitation of a party that was already in full swing. I felt a strange sense of possession wash over me. My parents thought they were the kings and queens of this castle tonight. They had no idea they were just guests in my house. I pulled up to the main gate where a young valet attendant in a crisp white uniform was directing traffic. When he saw my car, his smile vanished instantly. He held up a gloved hand and stepped in front of my bumper, forcing me to slam on the brakes. "Excuse me, miss," he said, leaning down to my window. "Deliveries are at the service entrance around the back. This driveway is for guests only." I rolled down the window. The humid night air rushed in, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and roasting meat. "I am a guest," I said calmly. "My name is Sasha Hamilton. My parents are hosting the party." The valet looked at my car. He looked at the dent in the passenger door. He looked at my gray hoodie. He let out a short scoff that was more insulting than a slap. "Right," he said dryly. "And I am the Prince of Wales. Turn around, miss. You are holding up the line. There is a Jaguar behind you, and the driver looks impatient. Before I could respond, I saw movement near the front portico. A woman in a gold sequined dress was rushing down the stone steps. It was my mother, Linda. She was moving faster than I had seen her move in years, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. She had spotted my car. She reached the driver's side window before the valet could wave me away. Her face was a mask of pure horror. Her makeup was flawless, but her eyes were wild with panic. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, grabbing the doorframe with her manicured claws. "I told you not to come. Did you not get my text?" I looked at her. "Hello, Mother. You look nice." "Do not play games with me, Sasha," she snapped. "Look at this. Look at what you are driving. You are blocking the entrance with this piece of junk. We have investors coming. We have Elijah Sterling coming. If he sees this rust bucket parked next to his Rolls-Royce, he will think we are a charity case." She looked around nervously, checking to see if anyone important was watching. "Turn around right now," she whispered harshly. "Go home. We will send you some food tomorrow. Just get this eyesore off my lawn." I turned off the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. "I am not staying," I said, reaching into the passenger seat. "I just came to drop off a gift." I picked up a small velvet box. Inside was a simple antique brooch. It was not expensive compared to the jewelry she was wearing, but it had belonged to her grandmother. I had spent months tracking it down from a pawn shop she had sold it to years ago. It was a peace offering, a final test. I held it out the window. "Happy anniversary, Mom." She looked at the box like it was filled with anthrax. She did not even open it. She snatched it from my hand, her fingers digging into my palm. "Is this another one of your handmade crafts?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "We do not need your cheap trinkets, Sasha. We need you to disappear." And then she did something that severed the last thread of loyalty I had left. She turned and threw the velvet box into the thick azalea bushes lining the driveway. She did not even look to see where it landed. I watched the box disappear into the dark leaves. That was it. That was the answer I needed. "Now move," she commanded, pointing toward the exit, "before you ruin everything." I put my hand on the gear shift, ready to reverse, but then a beam of blinding white light cut through the darkness. A low, powerful engine purred behind my Honda. My mother gasped. Her hand flew to her throat. She looked past me, her eyes widening to the size of saucers. "It is him," she whispered. "It is the Phantom. Elijah Sterling is here." She instantly forgot I existed. She smoothed down her dress, adjusted her hair, and put on a smile so bright and fake it looked painful. She waved frantically at the valet. "Move this car!" she shrieked at him, pointing at me. "Push it into the ditch if you have to. Just get it out of the way. Mr. Sterling needs the prime spot." The valet looked at me pleadingly. "Miss, please. You have to move." I looked at my mother one last time. She was practically vibrating with excitement, ready to greet the billionaire she thought would save her. She did not see her daughter. She only saw an obstacle. I shifted the car into drive. "Do not worry, Mother," I said, my voice low and final. "I am leaving the main entrance. I would not want to ruin your moment." I stepped on the gas and swerved around the valet. But I did not head back toward the main road. I turned the wheel sharp left, heading down a narrow, unlit service path that disappeared into the woods surrounding the estate. "Hey," my mother yelled, running a few steps after me. "Where are you going? That is a dead end. Get off the property." I ignored her screaming. I watched in my rearview mirror as the massive black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the spot I had just vacated. I saw my father and Hunter running down the stairs to join my mother, bowing and scraping as the back door of the luxury car opened. They were so focused on the guest of honor they did not notice where I went. I drove the Honda down the dark path until the noise of the party faded. The path ended at a heavy steel gate marked "Private Property, No Trespassing." I stopped the car. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a sleek black key card. It did not have a name on it, only a gold-embossed logo. S.H. Holdings. I rolled down the window and held the card up to the scanner. The red light on the reader turned green instantly. The heavy steel gates groaned and swung open, welcoming me in. This was the owner's entrance. It led directly to the underground garage and the private elevator that accessed the master suite on the top floor, a suite that overlooked the entire ballroom. I drove through the gates, and they closed behind me with a solid, reassuring thud. My mother was right about one thing. The party was for the elite. She just didn't realize that while she was begging for a seat at the table, I owned the building the table stood in. I parked my rusted Honda next to a pristine vintage Ferrari that was stored under a tarp. I stepped out of the car. The air here was quiet and cool. I walked to the trunk and opened it. Inside, hanging in a protective bag, was the blood-red Versace dress. "It is showtime," I whispered to the empty garage. I headed for the elevator. Upstairs, the wolves were waiting. But they had no idea the hunter was already in the house. The atmosphere in the driveway of the grand estate had shifted from festive to suffocating. The air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the nervous sweat of my family. From my vantage point in the master suite overlooking the entrance, I zoomed the camera lens in. I could see every bead of perspiration on my father's forehead. I could see the way my mother Linda was nervously smoothing the sequins on her dress, as if the fabric itself could hide her insecurity. They were lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. My father Byron stood in the center trying to look like the patriarch of a dynasty. My mother was to his right, wearing a smile that was frozen in place. And Hunter, my brother-in-law, was bouncing on the balls of his feet. He looked like a predator waiting to pounce. He adjusted his tie for the 10th time, checking his reflection in the window of a parked Mercedes. Then the moment arrived. The Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop directly in front of the grand staircase. The engine cut out, and for a moment there was absolute silence. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. The driver's side door opened, and a uniformed chauffeur stepped out. He walked around the massive vehicle with practiced slowness, ignoring my father, who was practically vibrating with impatience. The chauffeur opened the rear passenger door. Elijah Sterling stepped out. Even on a grainy security feed, he radiated power. He was a tall man in his late 50s with graying hair and a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Hunter's entire wardrobe. He did not look at the house. He did not look at the decorations. He stood on the gravel and adjusted his cufflinks, looking calm and utterly unimpressed. This was the moment my family had been waiting for. This was the moment they thought would validate their entire existence. My father lunged forward. He moved too fast, desperate to be the first to make contact. "Mr. Sterling," he boomed, his voice too loud for the quiet evening. "What an incredible honor! I am Byron Hamilton. Welcome to my home. We are so humbled that you chose to grace our anniversary celebration with your presence." He extended his hand aggressively, expecting a warm embrace, or at least a firm handshake between equals. But Sterling did not move. He looked at my father's hand, as if it were a dead fish. He gave a curt nod, barely acknowledging him. "Thank you, Mr. Hamilton," Sterling said. His voice was deep and smooth like polished stone. Before my father could recover from the snub, Hunter inserted himself into the conversation. He stepped in front of my mother, blocking her view completely. This was Hunter's signature move. He had no respect for boundaries, especially when he smelled money. "Mr. Sterling," Hunter said, grinning widely, showing too many teeth. "It is a pleasure to finally meet the man behind the myth. I am Hunter Davis. I run Apex Capital. I have been following your acquisition of the Horizon Tech Group." Brilliant move. Truly brilliant. "Actually, I have some thoughts on how you could optimize the tax liabilities on that deal. We should chat. I have a pitch deck in my car that outlines a synergy between my fund and your portfolio." I watched from my screen and felt a wave of secondhand embarrassment. It was painful. Hunter was pitching a billionaire in the driveway of a party before the man had even been offered a drink. It was tacky. It was desperate. And it was exactly what I expected. Sterling turned his head slowly to look at Hunter. His expression was unreadable. Apex Capital. Sterling repeated. I do not believe I am familiar with that firm. Hunter laughed a nervous high-pitched sound. Well, we are boutique. Very exclusive, high yield. We keep a low profile to protect our high-net-worth clients, like Byron here. My father puffed out his chest trying to look like a high-net-worth client, instead of a man who was 3 months behind on his country club dues. Sterling stared at Hunter for a second longer than was comfortable. Then he turned away, dismissing him entirely. He looked around the gathered crowd. He scanned the faces of the other guests who were watching from the terrace. He looked at the doorway. He looked at the windows. He was looking for me. I smiled, sipping my wine in the dark penthouse. Is there a problem, Mr. Sterling? My mother asked, stepping forward, her voice trembling slightly. Can I get you a glass of champagne? We have a vintage Dom Perignon chilled just for you. Sterling ignored the offer. He looked directly at my father. I was under the impression that Sasha would be here, he said. The silence that followed was heavy. My father's smile faltered. My mother froze. Hunter stopped bouncing. Sasha, my father repeated as if he had never heard the name before. Yes, Sterling said. Sasha Hamilton, your daughter, my chief strategist. She told me she would be attending tonight. She is the primary reason I accepted the invitation. I have urgent matters to discuss with her regarding my Senate run. Where is she? Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. I saw it flash across their faces in real time. They had told everyone I was a failure. They had told everyone I was a poor assistant who embarrassed them. If they admitted I was the chief strategist for one of the most powerful men in the country, their entire narrative would crumble. Their friends would ask questions. The investors Hunter was trying to scam would ask questions. They had to lie. And they had to lie big. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was paralyzed by the fear of being exposed. Hunter, however, was a pathological liar. He stepped in to save the sinking ship. Ah, Sasha, Hunter said, shaking his head with a look of deep, exaggerated sadness. He put a hand on my father's shoulder, feigning support. We did not want to burden you with this, Mr. Sterling. It is a family tragedy, really. Sterling raised an eyebrow. A tragedy. Yes, Hunter continued, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Sasha is not well. She has been struggling for a long time. Mental health issues, you know. The pressure of whatever small jobs she does. It finally got to her. She had a breakdown last week. A severe one. I gripped the stem of my wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. A breakdown. Sterling looked at Hunter with a sharpness that would have cut a lesser man. Is that so? He asked. Hunter nodded solemnly. It is heartbreaking. We had to make the difficult decision to have her admitted to a facility. For her own safety, of course. She is currently at the Whispering Pines Sanatorium upstate, no phone access. No visitors. She needs to stabilize. She imagines things, you know. Delusions of grandeur. Sometimes she tells people she works for important figures. It is part of the illness. My mother caught on quickly. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. Yes, it is true. My poor baby. We are devastated. That is why we did not want her here tonight. The crowds. The noise. It triggers her episodes. We just want her to get the help she needs. My father nodded, looking down at his shoes. It is a private family matter. We hope you understand. I watched them. I watched the three people who were supposed to love me unconditionally stand there and paint me as a lunatic to save their own egos. They stripped away my dignity, my career, and my sanity in under 30 seconds just to impress a stranger. Hunter looked at Sterling expecting sympathy, expecting the billionaire to pat him on the back and say, I understand. But Elijah Sterling did not offer sympathy. He stood very still. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I knew exactly what he was seeing. He was seeing the text message I had sent him 3 minutes ago. Do not correct them yet. Let them dig the grave. Ask about the ROI. Sterling looked at the phone, then looked back at Hunter. A small, cold smile touched his lips. I see, he said. That is indeed tragic. Mental stability is so fragile. Just like financial markets, I suppose. Hunter relaxed, visibly thinking the lie had worked. Exactly. Hunter exhaled. Exactly like the markets. Well, Sterling said, clasping his hands behind his back. Since Sasha is indisposed, perhaps you can entertain me, Mr. Davis. You mentioned your fund. Apex Capital. Hunter's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Yes, sir. Apex Capital. I admire a man who takes care of his family, Sterling said, leading them toward the house. If you manage your clients' money as carefully as you manage your sister-in-law's health, I am sure your returns are impressive. Tell me, what is your return on investment year over year? Hunter puffed out his chest. We are tracking at 40% monthly, Mr. Sterling. Sterling laughed, a loud, genuine laugh that echoed off the stone pillars. 40%. That is miraculous. I have never seen numbers like that outside of a fairy tale. Or a felony. Hunter chuckled nervously, not sure if he was being insulted or complimented. We have a proprietary algorithm. I am sure you do, Sterling said, walking up the stairs. I watched them enter the house. My mother and father were flanking Sterling like bodyguards, beaming with pride. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully erased me and secured their prize. I set my wine glass down on the marble counter. I walked over to the closet and pulled out the red Versace gown. They said I was crazy. They said I was institutionalized. They said I had delusions of grandeur. I unzipped the dress. If they wanted a crazy woman, I would give them one. I would give them a woman crazy enough to burn their entire house down while they were still inside eating cake. It was time to make an appearance. The view from the second-floor balcony was perfect. It was a private mezzanine level hidden behind tinted glass that allowed me to see the entire ballroom without being seen. I stood in the darkness holding a glass of sparkling water and watching the circus below. I had accessed the venue's audio system through my tablet. With a simple tap, I could isolate the microphone feed from any area of the room. I tapped the screen, focusing on the cluster of people standing near the champagne tower. There he was. Hunter. He was holding court surrounded by a group of wealthy guests. I recognized them immediately. The Robinsons, who owned a chain of luxury hotels. Dr. Arrington, the most prominent neurosurgeon in Atlanta. And of course, my parents standing just behind Hunter, nodding along like bobbleheads. I put in my earpiece and turned up the volume. Hunter's voice flooded into my ear crystal clear. It has been incredibly difficult, Hunter was saying, his voice dropping to a somber whisper. We tried everything for Sasha. Private tutors, therapy, rehabilitation centers. But the delusions just kept getting worse. Mrs. Robinson placed a hand on her chest, looking horrified. Oh, you poor dears. That must be exhausting. It is. Hunter sighed, looking down at his drink as if carrying the weight of the world. But what can you do? She is family. My wife Chloe is a saint. She visits Sasha every week, even though Sasha usually just screams at her and accuses us of stealing her thoughts. I stood there in the dark and felt a cold smile spread across my face. Stealing her thoughts. No, Hunter. You were stealing my identity. My mother chimed in, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. Hunter is too modest. He has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of his own money to pay for her care. The facility she is in, it is not cheap, but Hunter insisted. He said we cannot let her end up on the street. I tapped the record button on my tablet. The audio file began to save. This was it. This was the narrative they had built. I was not just the black sheep. I was the financial drain. I was the excuse for every dollar they did not have. Dr. Arrington looked impressed. That is very noble of you, son. Most young men would not take on the burden of a mentally ill sister-in-law. That kind of care costs a fortune. Hunter perked up. This was his opening. I saw his posture change. He shifted from the grieving relative to the salesman. Well, Hunter said, leaning in, That is actually why I founded the Compassion Fund at my firm Apex Capital. I needed to generate aggressive returns to cover these medical bills. I realized that traditional investing was too slow, so I developed a high-frequency algorithm that capitalizes on market volatility. Here we go, I whispered to the empty room. The pitch. Hunter continued, his eyes locking onto Dr. Arrington. In fact, we are seeing returns of 40% month over month. It is how I can afford the best doctors for Sasha and still maintain this lifestyle for the family. I actually just opened up a few spots in the fund for friends and family. Since you are friends of Byron. I watched as Dr. Arrington raised an eyebrow. 40%. That is unheard of. It is proprietary, Hunter said quickly. But the results speak for themselves. Just ask Byron. He just moved his entire retirement portfolio into the fund last week. My father nodded eagerly. It is true. Best decision I ever made. Hunter is a wizard. I watched Dr. Arrington reach into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a business card. I saw the greed flickering in his eyes. Hunter had him. He was about to hook another victim using my name as bait. I looked down at my phone. The forensic report from Team Alpha was still open on the screen. The Compassion Fund did not exist. The money my father had given him 3 days ago had already been transferred to a shell account in the Caymans and then spent on a payment to a loan shark in Las Vegas. If Dr. Arrington invested tonight, his money would be gone by morning. I could have gone down there right then. I could have stopped it. But I needed more. I needed Hunter to hang himself completely. I needed Elijah Sterling to be the one to pull the chair out from under him. I opened my encrypted messaging app. I typed a message to Elijah Sterling. Subject: The pitch. Message. He is using my alleged insanity to sell a Ponzi scheme. He claims 40% monthly returns. Do not expose him yet. Ask him about the liquidity pool. Ask him how he hedges against a market correction. Make him sweat. I hit send. On the screen below, I saw Sterling check his watch. Then he pulled out his phone. He read the message. I saw him pause. He looked up. For a second, he looked directly at the tinted glass of the balcony. He could not see me, but he knew exactly where I was. He gave a barely perceptible nod. Then he turned to Hunter. Hunter was just reaching for Dr. Arrington's business card when Sterling stepped into the circle. The group parted immediately to let the billionaire through. Mr. Davis Sterling said, his voice booming over the low murmur of the party. Hunter jumped. He spun around, hiding his surprise with a wide grin. Mr. Sterling, I was just telling the doctor here about your sister-in-law? Sterling interrupted. I couldn't help but overhear. It is truly tragic. Hunter nodded, putting his sad face back on. Thank you, sir. It is a daily struggle. Sterling swirled the amber liquid in his glass. You know, I have always believed that a man's character is defined by how he treats the vulnerable. You are supporting an entire family. You are paying for specialized medical care, and you are hosting this lavish event. My parents beamed. They thought Sterling was praising him. But then Sterling's eyes hardened. Your fund must be performing exceptionally well to sustain that level of cash burn, Sterling said. 40% returns, you said. Hunter swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Consistently. That is fascinating, Sterling said, taking a step closer. Because in my experience, the only way to generate 40% monthly returns without risk is to break the law. Tell me, Mr. Davis, what is your liquidity strategy? If the market corrects tomorrow, how do you protect your principal? The air in the circle changed. It went from admiration to tension. Dr. Arrington pulled his hand back, leaving his business card in his pocket. Hunter blinked. Sweat started to bead on his upper lip. Well, we hedge. We use a diversified portfolio of derivatives. Derivatives, Sterling repeated flatly. Which ones? Options, futures, swaps. Hunter looked at my father for help, but my father was clueless. Hunter laughed nervously. It is a complex algorithm, Mr. Sterling. It is hard to explain in a social setting. Try me, Sterling said coldly. I understand complex numbers. Hunter was drowning. I could see it. He was used to baffling high school teachers and retired dentists with buzzwords. He was not ready for a man who built a financial empire from scratch. Well, Hunter stammered. We focus on emerging markets. Emerging markets, Sterling said, raising his voice slightly so the people nearby could hear. That is strange, because you just told Dr. Arrington you use high-frequency algorithmic trading. Those are two completely different strategies. Which is it, Mr. Davis? Are you a quant or are you a speculator? Hunter opened his mouth but no words came out. He looked like a deer in headlights. My mother, sensing the disaster, stepped in. Oh, Mr. Sterling, let us not talk about boring business. This is a party. Hunter is just tired. He works so hard for our family, especially with Sasha's condition. Sterling turned his gaze to my mother. It was a look of pure pity. Sasha's condition, he repeated. Yes, let us talk about that. Because I'm starting to wonder if the only thing sick in this family is the truth. My mother froze. What do you mean? Sterling smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. He looked back up at the balcony. I think it is time we cleared up a few things, Sterling said. Hunter, you said Sasha is in a facility. You said she is delusional. You said she is a financial burden. Hunter nodded vigorously, desperate to get back on safe ground. Yes, sir. It is the truth. Is it? Sterling asked. Because looking at your watch, which is a replica, and your shoes, which are scuffed, I would say Sasha is the only one in this family who actually understands the value of $1. Hunter's face turned red. Excuse me, my watch is real. Sterling laughed. It is not. And neither is your fund. The music seemed to stop. The conversations around them died down. Everyone was looking at them now. Hunter clenched his fists. You are insulting me in my own home. Sterling took a sip of his drink. Your home? That is interesting, because I was under the impression that we were standing in Sasha's living room. Hunter scoffed. Sasha. She lives in a studio apartment downtown. She can barely afford rent. Sterling shook his head slowly. He looked up at the balcony one last time. Sasha, he called out, his voice clear and commanding. I think they are ready for you now. Why don't you come down and tell us about your delusions? I set my glass down on the table. I smoothed the front of my red dress. I walked to the door of the suite. The game was over. It was time for the slaughter. The ballroom lights dimmed until there was only a single spotlight cutting through the darkness. It landed on the small elevated stage where my sister Chloe was standing. She held a microphone in one hand and a champagne flute in the other. She looked like the picture of innocence in her pastel pink dress, the sequins catching the light like crushed diamonds. But from my vantage point in the shadows of the second-floor balcony, I could see the truth. I could see the way her eyes darted around the room, checking to make sure all the cameras were recording. I could see the tightness in her jaw that betrayed her desperation for validation. She tapped the microphone twice. The sound echoed through the silent room, causing the hundreds of guests to turn their attention toward her. Good evening, everyone. Chloe began, her voice trembling with a rehearsed emotion that made my stomach turn. I am Chloe Davis, the daughter of Byron and Linda. Standing here tonight, celebrating 30 years of my parents' marriage, I am overwhelmed. She paused to wipe a tear that I was 90% sure did not exist. Growing up, my parents taught me that image is everything, she continued with a small laugh that rippled through the crowd. No, I am joking. They taught me that family is everything. They sacrificed so much to give us this life, to give us this beautiful estate which has been in our family for as long as I can remember. I took a sip of my sparkling water. That was a lie. The estate had been in our family for exactly 4 hours since I bought it this morning. But Chloe did not know that. She was spinning a fairy tale. She looked down at Hunter, who was standing in the front row puffing out his chest. And because family is everything, I am so blessed to have found a husband who honors that legacy, Chloe said, beaming at him. Hunter, you are my rock. You are the smartest man I know. The way you have taken care of us, especially with the burden of my sister, it shows your true character. A murmur of agreement went through the crowd. They were buying it. They were eating up the narrative of the saintly sister and the benevolent brother-in-law. But tonight, Chloe said, her voice rising with excitement, I have a surprise announcement, a testament to the trust and love in this room. She signaled to a waiter who brought out a large ceremonial check covered in a velvet cloth. My parents and Hunter have been working on this for weeks, she announced. To secure the legacy of the Hamilton family, my mother and father have made a bold decision. Tonight, they are officially transferring the management of their entire retirement portfolio and the equity from their properties to Apex Capital. She pulled the cloth away. The guests gasped politely. It was not a real check, but a symbolic prop showing a transfer of assets. My parents are becoming the anchor investors in Hunter's new compassion fund, Chloe declared triumphantly. This capital will be used to generate wealth for generations to come. It is a symbol of their faith in Hunter and their commitment to our future. The room erupted in applause. My father walked up to the stage and hugged Hunter. My mother was clapping so hard her bracelets jingled. They looked ecstatic. They looked like they had just won the lottery. I stood there in the dark and felt a profound sense of sadness. Not for me, but for them. They were celebrating their own execution. They had just handed the last of their money to a man who was already spending it in his head. I looked at Hunter. He was not looking at my parents with gratitude. He was looking at the imaginary numbers in his bank account. He was looking at his salvation from the loan sharks. I set my glass down on the railing with a sharp clink. Fools, I whispered. I turned away from the glass partition. The time for watching was over. I tapped the small earpiece in my right ear. Marcus Stone, I said, my voice low and commanding. Secure the perimeter. I am coming down. Copy that. Ms. Hamilton, came the voice of my head of security. We are holding the elevator. I walked to the private elevator at the back of the suite. The doors slid open silently. I stepped in and checked my reflection one last time. The red dress was flawless. My expression was impenetrable. I was not Sasha the daughter. I was Sasha the executioner. As the elevator descended, I listened to the audio feed from the ballroom. Chloe was wrapping up her speech. So please raise your glasses, Chloe chirped, to family, to trust, and to Apex Capital. I heard the clinking of hundreds of glasses. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor just behind the main stage. I stepped out into the hallway that led to the ballroom entrance. My two bodyguards were waiting for me. They were massive men in black suits who made the venue's security look like mall cops. They fell in step behind me as I walked toward the double doors. Inside the ballroom, the toast was about to happen. To the Hamiltons, the crowd chanted, but before anyone could drink, a voice cut through the celebration like a knife. One moment, please. It was Elijah Sterling. I paused just outside the doors, listening. Sterling had stepped up to the stage. He did not need a microphone. His voice carried the natural authority of a man who could buy and sell everyone in the room. The room went deadly silent. Chloe looked confused, holding her glass in midair. Hunter looked terrified. Mr. Sterling. Chloe stammered. Is everything okay? Do you want to add a toast? Sterling looked at her and then at Hunter. He did not smile. I do not think we should be drinking to this transaction just yet, Sterling said calmly. You see, I have a rule in business. Never close a deal without due diligence. Hunter laughed nervously. Oh, Mr. Sterling, this is just a family arrangement. It is already done. The papers are signed. Are they? Sterling asked. That is unfortunate, because I have some questions about the valuation, and frankly, I do not trust the numbers I am hearing. My father stepped forward, trying to regain control. Mr. Sterling, please. Hunter is a financial wizard. We trust him with our lives. That is exactly what worries me, Sterling said. He turned his back on my father and looked toward the double doors where I was standing. I am not a financial wizard. Sterling continued, addressing the silent crowd. I am just an investor. And when I smell smoke, I call the fire department. But in this case, I decided to call someone better. He paused, letting the tension build until it was almost unbearable. Before anyone drinks to this investment, Sterling said, I would like to hear the opinion of my personal financial advisor, the person who actually built my portfolio, the person who told me 10 minutes ago that this fund is a mathematical impossibility. Chloe frowned. Your advisor? Is he here? Sterling smiled a cold, predatory smile. She is here, he said. And then he pointed directly at the doors. Everyone turned. My mother looked confused. Hunter looked sick. I signaled to Marcus. He pushed the double doors open. They swung wide with a dramatic creak, revealing me framed in the doorway against the light of the hallway. The red dress blazed like fire. The diamonds in my ears caught the spotlight. I took one step into the room. The sound of a glass shattering echoed through the silence. My mother had dropped her champagne flute. I looked at her. I looked at Hunter. And finally, I looked at Chloe standing on the stage with her mouth open. Hello, family, I said, my voice echoing off the walls. I heard there was a party for the elite. I hope I am not late. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. 300 people held their breath, staring at the double mahogany doors, as if they were the gates to another world. Elijah Sterling stood on the stage, his arms still extended, pointing directly at the entrance. My family stood frozen in a tableau of panic. I took a breath. This was it. The moment I had been rehearsing in my head for 10 years. I pushed the doors open. They swung wide with a heavy, expensive groan, revealing the long hallway behind me. The lights from the corridor poured into the dim ballroom, creating a silhouette. I stepped through the frame and into the spotlight. I heard the collective gasp of the room. It rippled through the crowd like a wave. I was not wearing the gray hoodie. I was not wearing the scuffed sneakers. I was wearing the vintage Versace gown. The red silk flowed around my body like liquid fire, hugging every curve and pooling slightly at my feet. The slit in the skirt revealed my legs strong and steady in black stilettos. But it was not just the dress. It was the diamonds. At my throat sat a necklace of raw, uncut diamonds that I had purchased at an auction in Geneva 3 years ago. In my ears were 4-carat studs that caught the stage lights and threw rainbows across the room. On my wrist was a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than my parents' mortgage. I saw my sister Chloe's eyes widen. She looked down at her own jewelry, the cubic zirconia bracelet she had bragged about on Instagram, and then back up at me. She knew. In that split second, she knew the difference between costume jewelry and generational wealth. I started to walk. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, a slow rhythmic beat that sounded like a countdown. Click, click, click. The crowd parted for me. People I had known my whole life, neighbors who had pitied me, friends of my parents who had ignored me, suddenly scrambled to get out of my way. They looked at me with a mixture of confusion and awe. They did not recognize the woman in the red dress. They were looking for the sad little assistant. Instead, they found a queen. I walked straight down the center aisle. I kept my chin high, my expression bored and cold. I did not look left. I did not look right. I locked my eyes on the stage. I saw my father, Byron. His mouth was hanging open, his jaw practically on the floor. He looked like a fish gasping for air. The cigar in his hand had gone out, but he was still gripping it so hard I thought it might snap. I saw my mother, Linda. The color had drained from her face completely, leaving her looking pale and ghostly under her heavy makeup. Her hands were clutching her sequined dress as if she were trying to hold herself together physically. And then there was Hunter. Hunter was standing at the edge of the stage, holding a glass of scotch. As I drew closer, he looked me up and down. His eyes lingered on the watch on my wrist. He recognized it. He knew exactly what it was worth because he had probably tried to buy a fake version of it once. His hands started to shake. Then it happened. The glass slipped from his fingers. Smash! The sound of expensive crystals shattering on the floor broke the trance. Amber liquid splashed onto his rented tuxedo shoes. He did not even look down. He just stared at me, terror rising in his throat. I did not stop walking. I stepped right over the broken glass and the spilled alcohol. I did not even look at him. To me, he was just furniture. I reached the stage. I walked past my parents without a glance. I walked past Chloe, who was shrinking back into the shadows. I walked straight to Elijah Sterling. The billionaire watched me approach. A small, genuine smile touched the corners of his lips. He respected power. And tonight, I was radiating it. I stopped in front of him. I extended my hand. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice smooth and clear, projecting to the back of the room without a microphone. My apologies for the delay. Sterling took my hand and kissed the air above it, a gesture of respect he had never shown anyone else in that room. Ms. Hamilton, he said, we were just discussing your situation. Your brother-in-law was under the impression that you were indisposed. I turned slowly to face the room. I stood next to Sterling, facing the crowd and my family. We looked like a united front, two titans of industry looking down at the amateurs. I looked at Hunter, who was wiping scotch off his shoe with a cocktail napkin. Indisposed, I repeated. Ah, yes, the facility. I laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. I am sorry, Mr. Sterling, but you know how Atlanta traffic is. Getting out of the insane asylum on a Friday night is absolute murder. The line for the medication window was backed up for miles. A few people in the crowd chuckled nervously. They were starting to realize that the joke was not on me. Sterling smiled. I am glad you made it. You look remarkably lucid for someone in the middle of a breakdown. I brushed a piece of imaginary dust off my red silk shoulder. Well, I said, looking directly at my mother. I have incredible doctors. They prescribed me a heavy dose of reality. It does wonders for the complexion. My mother could not take it anymore. The shock had worn off and the rage had set in. She could not stand seeing me up there standing next to the most powerful man in the room, looking better than her daughter, looking richer than her husband. She lunged forward. She grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my skin, sharp and painful. She pulled me away from the microphone, her face contorted into a mask of pure venom. She leaned in close so only I could hear her. Her breath smelled of stale champagne and desperation. What do you think you are doing? She hissed, her voice shaking with fury. Where did you get that dress? Did you steal it? Is it a rental? I looked down at her hand on my arm. I did not flinch. Let go of me, mother, I said calmly. No, she whispered harshly. You are ruining everything. Look at you. You are making a spectacle of yourself. We told Mr. Sterling you were sick. Now he thinks we are liars. I raised an eyebrow. You are liars, mother. She dug her nails in deeper. You ungrateful little brat. I do not know what game you are playing, but it ends now. Get out. Go out the back door right now before I call security and have you thrown out. You are embarrassing the family. I looked at her. I looked at the fear in her eyes. She was terrified, not of me, but of the truth. I leaned in close to her ear. Call security, mother, I whispered back. Go ahead. Ask for the head of security. His name is Marcus. Ask him who signs his paycheck. She blinked, confused. What? I pulled my arm from her grip. I smoothed the red silk where she had touched me as if wiping away dirt. You cannot throw me out, mother, I said loud enough for Hunter to hear. Why not, she demanded. Because I said, locking eyes with her. You are standing in my house. My mother's fingers were still digging into my bicep, clutching the red silk of my Versace gown as if it were a lifeline. In the past, her touch would have made me shrink. It would have made me apologize. It would have made me feel like the clumsy little girl who ruined family dinners. But tonight, I felt nothing but disgust. Her grip was not strong. It was frantic. It was the desperate clawing of a woman who was watching her carefully constructed lie unravel in front of 300 witnesses. I looked down at her hand. Her knuckles were white. Her manicure was perfect, but the skin around her nails was dry. Stress does terrible things to the body, and my mother had been stressed for years trying to keep up with the Joneses. I pulled my arm back. I did not yank it. I simply exerted a steady, unstoppable force that broke her hold. "Do not touch the dress, Mother," I said, my voice dropping to a register that was ice cold. "This silk is vintage archival. You could sell every piece of jewelry you are currently wearing, and you still would not be able to cover the cost of the dry cleaning, let alone the replacement value." My mother recoiled as if I had slapped her. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked at her empty hand and then back at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fury. But before she could scream, before she could cause a scene that would force security to intervene, a shadow fell over me. It was Hunter. He stepped between my mother and me, using his large frame to block her from the view of the crowd. This was Hunter's favorite tactic: physical intimidation. He was 6'2" and spent hours at the gym building muscles that were purely for show. He used his size to dominate conversations, to silence dissent, and to make women feel small. He had done it to me 1,000 times in my own kitchen. He would lean over me while I was cooking, invading my personal space until I backed away. But tonight I was wearing 4-inch stilettos. I was standing tall. And more importantly, I was not afraid. Hunter loomed over me, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. He reeked of expensive scotch and cheap cologne. He put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that looked affectionate to the audience, but felt heavy and controlling to me. "Okay, Sasha," he said, his voice loud and booming, trying to play the role of the patient, protective brother-in-law. "That is enough. We get it. You made your point. You look great. The dress is beautiful, but you are clearly not yourself." He squeezed my shoulder hard. His fingers dug into my collarbone. "You are having an episode," he whispered harshly, so only I could hear. "You are drunk, or you are high, or you are just insane. But you are done." He looked up at the crowd, flashing a charming, apologetic smile. "Folks, please forgive my sister-in-law," he announced. "She has had a very long week. The medication sometimes makes her a little theatrical." He looked back down at me, his eyes narrowing into slits. "Come on, Sasha," he said, tightening his grip on my shoulder and trying to steer me toward the side exit. "Let us get you outside. Some fresh air will do you good. I will call you an Uber. You can go back to your apartment and sleep this off. We will talk about this tomorrow when you are sober." He tried to push me. He actually tried to physically force me to walk. I planted my feet. I did not move an inch. I reached up and grabbed his wrist. My grip was not gentle. I dug my thumb into the pressure point on the inside of his arm. Hunter gasped in pain and let go of me. I looked him dead in the eye. "Do not handle me, Hunter," I said, my voice ringing out clearly in the silent ballroom. "I am not one of your bad investments. You cannot just write me off and move on." Hunter rubbed his wrist, looking shocked that I had fought back. He laughed nervously, trying to recover his composure. "Sasha, seriously," he hissed. "You are embarrassing yourself. I am trying to help you. I am offering to pay for your ride home. Do you even have money for an Uber? Or is your card declined again?" He smirked. That arrogant, condescending smirk that he had worn for 5 years. The smirk of a man who thought he was untouchable because he was a man, and because he was white, and because he had married into a family that worshipped him. I smiled back, but my smile was not charming. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "An Uber," I repeated slowly, letting the word hang in the air. "That is a very kind offer, Hunter." "Thank you." I took a step closer to him, invading his space for the first time. "But I think you should keep that app open on your phone," I said. He frowned, confused. "What?" "You are going to need it," I said, "because you are not driving home tonight." Hunter scoffed. He rolled his eyes and looked at Sterling, seeking an ally. "Listen to her. She is talking nonsense. Of course I'm driving home. I drove here in my Porsche. It is parked right out front." "Ah, yes," I said, nodding. "The Porsche 911 GT3. The matte black one. The one you leased 3 months ago to impress the partners at the firm that does not exist. Hunter stiffened. How do you know about the lease? I know everything, Hunter, I said. I know that you put $5,000 down. I know that the monthly payment is $3,400. And I know that you have not made a single payment since the day you drove it off the lot. The color drained from his face. That is a lie, he stammered. I paid it. It is an auto-pay glitch. Is it? I asked, tilting my head. Because 10 minutes ago, while you were busy lying to Mr. Sterling about your 40% returns, a tow truck from the Georgia State Bank repo division pulled up to the valet stand. The crowd gasped. I heard whispers rippling through the room. Repo. Did she say repo? Hunter shook his head violently. No, no, that is impossible. I have the keys right here. He patted his jacket pocket frantically. You have the keys, I said, calm as a frozen lake, but you do not have the car. I watched on the security feed. The valet handed the keys over to the repo agent. They loaded it up right next to Mr. Sterling's Rolls-Royce. It was quite a scene. I think one of your investors took a photo. Hunter looked at the door. He looked like he wanted to run. He looked like he wanted to vomit. You are lying, he shouted, his voice cracking. You are just trying to humiliate me. You are jealous because I am successful and you are nothing. I took another step closer. I am nothing, I whispered. I am the woman who owns the building you are standing in. I am the woman who owns the debt you are drowning in. And I am the woman who just turned your ride home into a police report. Hunter opened his mouth to scream at me, to call me a liar, to strike me. But then a sound cut through the tension. Ring, ring, ring. It was a loud, piercing ringtone coming from Hunter's pocket. It was the default ringtone because he had sold his iPhone last week and was using a burner phone he thought no one knew about. The sound echoed in the silent ballroom. Answer it, Hunter, I said softly. He stared at me, terrified. Answer it, I commanded. His shaking hand reached into his pocket. He pulled out the cheap plastic phone. He looked at the screen. The caller ID did not say a name. It said a number starting with 800. I saw the recognition in his eyes. He knew that number. He had been dodging calls from that number for weeks. It is the bank, isn't it? I asked. Hunter looked up at me. His face was gray. The arrogance was gone. The bravado was gone. All that was left was a small, scared fraud who had finally run out of road. Go ahead, I said, pointing to the phone. Tell them it is an auto-pay glitch. I will wait. Hunter stood there with the burner phone ringing in his hand, looking like he was holding a live grenade that he did not know how to throw. The sound was piercing in the quiet room. He did not answer it. He just stared at the screen as the call went to voicemail and the ringing finally stopped, leaving a heavy, suffocating silence in its wake. But before the reality of his financial ruin could fully settle in, my sister Chloe decided to step into the line of fire. She had been standing on the stage, frozen in her pastel pink dress, clutching the microphone like a lifeline. But seeing her husband humiliated, seeing the man she had pinned all her hopes and dreams on being dismantled piece by piece, broke something inside her. She did not rush to comfort him. She did not ask if the allegations were true. Instead, she turned her rage toward the only target she had ever felt comfortable attacking. Miss Chloe stormed down the stairs of the stage. Her heels clacked violently against the wood. Her face was twisted into a mask of ugly distortion that ruined hours of professional makeup work. She marched right past Hunter, ignoring his terrified expression, and came straight for me. You are a monster! Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. Look at what you are doing. You are ruining our anniversary. You are ruining our lives. She stopped inches from my face, pointing a manicured finger at my nose. I could smell her perfume. It was sweet and cloying, covering up the scent of fear. You are just jealous, she screamed. You have always been jealous of me, Sasha. You are jealous because I am happy. You are jealous because I have a husband who loves me and a family that adores me. You are toxic. That is why you are alone. That is why you have nothing. I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had protected on the playground when we were kids. I looked at the woman who had grown up to be a hollow shell filled with envy and greed. She was right about one thing. I was toxic to them, but only because I was the antidote to their poison. I did not raise my voice. I did not scream back. I simply reached into the hidden pocket of my red Versace gown and pulled out my smartphone. Jealous, I repeated calmly. That is an interesting theory, Chloe. You think I am jealous of your life? Yes, she spat. Everyone knows it. You want what I have. I unlocked my phone. I opened the application that controlled the audiovisual system of the estate. Since I owned the building, I had administrative access to every screen and speaker in the venue. I looked over her shoulder at the massive projection screen behind the stage. It was currently displaying a slideshow of Chloe and Hunter's wedding photos set to a sappy love song. There they were cutting the cake. There they were posing on a beach in Maui. It was a montage of a perfect, expensive life. I tapped my screen once. The music cut out abruptly with a sharp scratch of static. The wedding photos vanished. In their place, a stark white spreadsheet appeared on the 20-foot screen. It was high-definition, crisp, and undeniable. The room gasped. It was a credit card statement. A very specific credit card statement from a titanium black card issued by American Express. Chloe froze. She looked at the screen and her eyes bulged. I took a step to the side so the audience could see it clearly. Let us talk about the life you have, Chloe, I said, my voice amplified by the room's acoustics, because according to this statement, the life you have is very expensive. I pointed to the first line item on the screen. Neiman Marcus, $3,200. I pointed to the next line. Saks Fifth Avenue, $4,500. I scrolled down on my phone, and the screen mirrored the movement, revealing page after page of transactions. Four Seasons Maui, $12,000. Porsche lease down payment, $5,000. Private jet charter, $8,000. The list went on and on. It was a catalog of excess. It was a diary of a woman desperately trying to buy an identity she could not afford. Chloe's face turned from red to a sickly shade of white. "Turn it off!" she screamed, lunging for me. "Turn it off, right now! You are violating my privacy!" I sidestepped her easily. She stumbled in her heels, almost falling onto the spilled scotch. "Privacy?" I asked. "That is a funny word for you to use, Chloe. Because if you look closely at the top of that statement, you will notice something interesting about the account holder's name." I zoomed in on the header of the document. The text was massive. It loomed over the ballroom like a judgment. Primary account holder, Sasha Hamilton. Authorized user, Chloe Davis. A ripple of shock went through the crowd. I heard people whispering. I saw Elijah Sterling cross his arms and nod slowly as if he had expected this all along. "You see," I said, addressing the room, "my sister likes to tell people she is independent. She likes to post photos of her shopping sprees and her vacations and tag them with hashtags like self-made and blessed. But the truth is, she has been funding her lifestyle with a credit card she opened in my name 6 months ago." Chloe was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "That is a lie," she sobbed. "You gave me that card. You said I could use it for emergencies." I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Emergencies?" I asked. I looked back at the screen. Is a $5,000 handbag an emergency, Chloe? Is a spa weekend in the Hamptons an emergency? I turned back to her. "I never gave you that card. You stole my social security number from my old tax returns in Mom's filing cabinet. You used my credit score, which is perfect, to open this account because your own credit score is somewhere in the triple digits. You forged my signature, and you maxed it out to the tune of $52,400. Chloe looked at our parents pleading for help. But Mom and Dad were staring at the screen horrified. They were not horrified by the theft. They were horrified by the public exposure. They were horrified that their golden child was being revealed as a fraud. I knew about it the moment you did it, I continued. My identity theft protection software alerted me immediately. I could have shut it down on day one. I could have called the police then. Then why didn't you? Chloe screamed. Why did you let me spend it? Because I wanted to see how far you would go, I said. I wanted to see how much of my life you felt entitled to steal. I watched you buy those shoes you are wearing. I watched you pay for the catering for this party. I watched you dig a hole so deep that you would never be able to climb out of it. I took a step closer to her. You called me toxic, Chloe. You said I was jealous. But looking at this screen, I do not see a woman who is jealous. I see a woman who has been subsidizing your entire existence. You are not elite, not. You are a dependent, and your allowance just ran out. The guests were no longer whispering. They were talking openly now. The polite facade of the high society party had shattered completely. Identity theft, one woman in a fur coat whispered loud enough to be heard. That is a felony. $50,000, a man in a tuxedo replied. That is grand larceny. She could go to prison for years. Chloe heard them. The reality of the situation crashed down on her. She was not just embarrassed. She was in legal jeopardy. She looked at Hunter, but he was still staring at his phone, paralyzed by his own problems. She looked at our parents, but they were shrinking away, trying to distance themselves from the blast radius. She was alone. I tapped my phone one last time. The screen changed again. This time it showed a legal document. A police report filed this morning. Status: pending arrest. Suspect: Chloe Davis. Charge: identity theft, wire fraud, grand larceny. I looked at my sister. She looked like a child who had been caught playing dress-up in a burning building. You asked why I hid this from the family, Chloe, I said softly. I didn't hide it. I was just waiting for the perfect audience to present the evidence. And looking around at the stunned faces of Atlanta's elite, I knew I had chosen the perfect venue. The court of public opinion was in session and the verdict was already guilty. The voicemail notification on Hunter's burner phone chimed softly in the silence, but to everyone in the room it sounded like a gavel coming down. Hunter stared at the device in his hand. His chest was heaving. His face was slick with sweat. He looked around the room at the hundreds of eyes judging him and he snapped. He did not confess. He did not apologize. He did what narcissists always do when they are cornered. He attacked. He pointed a shaking finger at me. She is hacking me, he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. Don't you see what she is doing? This is all fake. All? She hacked the projector. She hacked my phone. She is making all of this up to destroy me because she is a bitter, lonely woman who cannot stand to see us happy. He spun around to face my father. He grabbed my father by the shoulders, shaking him, desperate to find an ally. Dad, you have to stop her. Hunter pleaded, his eyes wild. You know me. You know I am a genius. I have made you so much money on paper. Do not let her ruin this. She is trying to tank the fund. She is trying to bankrupt the family. Throw her out. Call the police on her. Do something. My father blinked. He looked at Hunter. He looked at me. And for a moment, I saw the hesitation in his eyes. He wanted to believe Hunter. He wanted to believe that the $50,000 watch on Hunter's wrist was real, because if it was fake, then my father was a fool. And Byron Hamilton hated being a fool almost as much as he hated being poor. Sasha. My father said, his voice stern, trying to regain control of his house, or rather the house he thought was his. Turn off the screen. You have made your point. We will discuss this in private. You are upsetting your mother. I looked at my father. Even now, with the evidence staring him in the face, he was choosing the lie. He was choosing the white son-in-law who promised him riches over the black daughter who told him the truth. I did not turn off the screen. I am afraid we cannot discuss this in private, Dad, I said calmly. Because when a crime this large is committed, silence is complicity, and I will not be an accomplice. Hunter lunged toward the AV control panel on the wall, trying to kill the feed. But before he could reach it, a hand shot out and blocked his path. It was not a bodyguard. It was Elijah Sterling. The billionaire did not look angry. He looked disappointed. He looked at Hunter the way a lion looks at a particularly annoying rodent. "Stop, Mr. Davis," Sterling said. "Mr. Davis?" His voice was not loud, but it carried an authority that froze Hunter in his tracks. Hunter panted, looking up at the man he had tried to swindle. "Mr. Sterling, please. She is lying. You have to believe me." Sterling reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a sleek tablet. He tapped the screen once and held it up. "I do not believe in," he said. "I believe in due diligence. While you were giving your speech about family values, I had my team in New York run a background check on Apex Capital." The room went deadly quiet. Sterling looked at the tablet, reading from the screen. "According to the Securities and Exchange Commission, there is no registered entity named Apex Capital licensed to trade securities in the United States," Sterling read. "There is no brokerage account. There is no audit history." He looked up at Hunter. "You are not running a hedge fund, son. You are running a ghost ship. You are taking money from new investors to pay off your personal debts and telling them it is market growth. In the financial world, we have a name for that." Sterling paused, letting the word hang there. "It is called a Ponzi scheme." Hunter shook his head violently, tears starting to form in his eyes. "No. No. That is not true. It is an offshore fund. We are registered in the Caymans. It is perfectly legal." "Ah, yes," Sterling said. "The Caymans." Sterling turned to me. "Ms. Hamilton, I believe you have some visibility on those offshore accounts." I nodded. I did not need to speak. I simply swiped my finger across my phone screen. The projector behind me changed images again. The credit card statements disappeared. In their place, a complex flowchart appeared. It showed the movement of money in bright neon green lines against a black background. "Let us look at the money trail, Hunter," I said, walking to the side of the stage so I could point to the graphics. I pointed to a large box on the left side of the screen labeled Hamilton Retirement Trust. 3 days ago, I said, my voice steady and clinical. My father, Byron Hamilton, liquidated his entire 401k and took out a second mortgage on the family home. The total amount was $500,000. A gasp went through the room. $500,000 was a life-changing amount of money. It was everything my parents had. I pointed to the green line moving from the trust box to a box labeled Apex Capital. "Here we see the transfer," I explained. "The money went into an account controlled by Hunter Davis. And here is where it gets interesting." I swiped again. The green line split. It did not go into stocks, it did not go into bonds, it did not go into crypto. It went into 2 specific places. I pointed to the first box. "DraftKings Sportsbook," I read aloud. $200,000 transferred immediately to cover outstanding gambling losses. I pointed to the second box. "Grand Cayman Shell Corp., LLC," I read. $300,000 transferred to a private account. I tapped the screen and the Cayman account details opened up. "And who is the sole signatory on this Cayman account?" I asked. The name appeared on the screen in bold letters. "Hunter Davis." I turned to the crowd. "He did not invest your money, Dad," I said, looking directly at my father. "He stole it. He wired it to an account that only he can access, and he is planning to flee the country with it. That is why he has a one-way ticket to Brazil booked for tomorrow morning." I swiped one last time, showing the flight confirmation I had hacked from his email. Hunter let out a strangled sob. It was the sound of a trapped animal. My father stood there frozen. The cigar finally fell from his hand, landing on the expensive rug. He stared at the screen. He stared at the numbers. $500,000. Gone. His face turned a terrifying shade of gray. He brought a hand up to his chest, clutching the fabric of his tuxedo shirt over his heart. "My money," my father whispered. His voice was so quiet I could barely hear it. That was everything." He looked at Hunter. The look in his eyes was not anger. It was betrayal so deep it looked like physical pain. You said 40%, my father stammered. "You said we would be rich. You said I could retire in style." Hunter backed away, holding his hands up. "Byron, listen. I can fix it. I just need more time. I have a system. I can win it back." "You gambled it," my father roared. The sound tore from his throat, a primal scream of realization. "You gambled my life savings on sports." My father staggered forward. His legs seemed to give out. He grabbed the edge of a table to steady himself, knocking over a vase of flowers. The water spilled everywhere, mixing with the broken glass on the floor. "Dad," I said, taking a step forward, my instinct to help kicking in despite everything. But he did not look at me. He looked at my mother. "Linda?" My father gasped, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. "The house. The mortgage." My mother was shaking her hands, covering her mouth. She looked at the screen where the words, "Second mortgage," were glowing in red. "We are homeless," she whispered. "Hunter told us the house was safe. He told us the returns would cover the loan." Sterling stepped forward, his face grim. "The house is not safe, Mrs. Hamilton, and neither is your money. Unless the authorities can freeze that Cayman account immediately, that $300,000 is as good as gone." My father looked at Hunter one last time. The son he wanted, the white executive he bragged about, the man he chose over me. You thief," my father wheezed. And then his eyes rolled back in his head. "Dad," I shouted. My father collapsed. He hit the floor with a heavy thud right in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of his own vanity. Panic erupted. Guests screamed. My mother fell to her knees beside him, screaming his name. "Byron! Byron! Wake up!" I stood over them. I looked at my father lying on the floor, clutching his chest. I looked at Hunter, who was taking advantage of the chaos to inch toward the exit. I looked at Sterling. "Stop him," I said, pointing at Hunter. "Do not let him leave." Sterling nodded to his security detail. Two massive guards moved to block the doors. But my eyes were on my father. I watched my mother trying to loosen his tie, her hands useless and trembling. "Help him," she screamed, looking up at me. "Sasha, do something. You are the smart one. Do something." I looked down at her. For the first time all night, she wasn't looking at me with contempt. She was looking at me with need. But as I looked at the man who had disowned me for being poor, lying on the floor because he had lost his fortune, I realized something terrifying. I could call the paramedics. I could pay for the best doctors in the world. I could even use my connections to freeze the Cayman account. But I could not fix the rot at the center of this family. I reached for my phone to dial 911. But as I dialed, I watched Hunter Davis, the golden child, frantically typing on his burner phone, trying to transfer the last of my parents' money before the inevitable end. "The ambulance is on the way," I said coldly. "But I think it is too late for the money." The paramedics were pushing through the crowd, their radios crackling with static, but my mother did not even look at them. She did not look at my father, who was gasping for air on the floor, clutching his chest as the reality of his bankruptcy set in. She did not look at Hunter, who was cowering against the wall like a cornered rat, frantically deleting emails from his phone. Number. Linda Hamilton looked at me. Her eyes were not filled with gratitude that I had exposed the fraud before he could steal more. They were not filled with remorse for how she had treated me. They were filled with a pure, unadulterated hatred that chilled the air between us. In her twisted mind, I was not the savior. I was the villain. I was the one who had pulled back the curtain and ruined her perfect play. She stepped over my father's legs. She ignored the guests who were whispering and pointing. She marched straight up to me, her gold sequined dress rustling aggressively. Why didn't you say something earlier? She screamed. Her voice was shrill, breaking the heavy silence of the ballroom. I looked down at her. Say something, I asked, calm and steady. Mother, I just broadcasted his crimes on a 20-foot screen. I think I said plenty. You waited, she accused, jabbing a finger at my chest. You knew. You knew about the money. You knew about the fake fund. You watched us sign those papers. You watched your father mortgage the house. You stood there, and you let it happen. She was trembling now. Her face was patchy and red. You did this on purpose, she hissed. You wanted to see us fall. You wanted to humiliate us. You are sick, Sasha. You are a vindictive, ungrateful child. Your father is having a heart attack because of you. The crowd gasped. The audacity of the accusation was breathtaking. Even Elijah Sterling, who had seen everything in his long career, looked shocked by her logic. I felt a cold hardness settle in my chest. This was it. The final confirmation. There was no redeeming her. There was no love lost beneath the surface. There was only ego. I did not let it happen. Mother, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I tried to warn you. Last week at Thanksgiving, I tried to tell you that Hunter was a fraud. You were jealous, she shouted, cutting me off. You were just jealous of his success. I tried to tell you tonight. I continued, stepping closer to her. I drove here. I came to the gate. I tried to give you a warning. And what did you do? I pointed to the door. You threw my gift in the bushes. You told the valet to push my car into a ditch. You told me to leave because I wasn't elite enough to breathe the same air as you. My mother's face twisted. She looked around at her friends, at the high society people she had spent her life trying to impress. They were looking at her with pity and disgust. She knew she had lost them. She knew the facade was gone. And she needed to hurt someone for it. You are a disgrace, she screamed. You are a bad daughter. You are dead to me. And then she did it. She raised her hand. She pulled her arm back, intending to slap me across the face, right there in front of 300 people. It was a reflex, a habit from my childhood when she used to discipline me for speaking out of turn. But I was not a child anymore. I watched her hand come toward me in slow motion. I saw the flash of her rings. I saw the intent to harm. I did not flinch. I did not close my eyes. My hand shot up. I caught her wrist inches from my face. The sound of my palm hitting her forearm was sharp and loud. Smack. My grip was like iron. I held her arms suspended in the air. I squeezed. Not enough to break bone, but enough to let her know that physical violence was no longer an option she possessed. My mother gasped. She tried to pull away, but I held fast. She looked into my eyes, and for the first time, she saw something that terrified her. She saw a stranger. Do not, I whispered. Do not ever try to strike me again. I lowered her arm slowly, but I did not let go. I pulled her slightly closer, until we were nose to nose. The room was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. You asked why I didn't speak earlier. I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. I tried, Mother. But you sent me a text message. Do you remember what it said? I waited, but she was too stunned to answer. It said, do not come, Sasha. Only elites are invited. I released her wrist with a shove that made her stumble back a step. You told me to be quiet because I was poor. You told me to be quiet because I was beneath you. You told me that only the people with money and power had the right to speak in this house. I smoothed the front of my red Versace dress. I adjusted the 4-carat diamonds in my ears. I stood at my full height, looking down at her, looking down at Hunter, looking down at the entire wreckage of their fake lives. Well, Mother, I said, I am speaking now. I swept my arm across the room, encompassing the chandeliers, the marble floors, the terrified guests. I am speaking with the authority you respect. I am speaking with the voice of the bank account you worship. Because whether you like it or not, I am the richest person in this room. My mother shook her head, looking at Elijah Sterling as if hoping he would correct me. But Sterling just raised his glass in a silent toast, confirming my status. I am not the assistant mother, I continued. I am the boss. I am not the failure. I am the landlord. And I am not the one who just lost everything. You are. My mother looked at my father, who was being loaded onto a stretcher by the paramedics. She looked at the police officers who were finally making their way through the crowd toward Hunter. She looked at the empty space where her dignity used to be. You planned this, she whispered. You planned this whole party just to destroy us. I did not plan the party, I said. I just paid for the venue. I turned away from her. I was done with the emotional conversation. It was time for the business transaction. I looked toward the side entrance where a man in a sharp navy suit had been waiting patiently holding a briefcase. It was Mr. Henderson, my personal attorney, and the head of my real estate acquisitions team. Mr. Henderson, I called out. He stepped forward, walking briskly onto the stage. Yes, Ms. Hamilton. I think there is some confusion about the guest list, I said, looking back at my mother. And there is definitely some confusion about who has the right to be on this property. Henderson opened his briefcase. He pulled out a thick stack of documents bound in legal blue paper. I think it is time we cleared up the ownership issues, I said. I looked at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, the party is officially over. But before you leave, my lawyer has a short presentation regarding the title deed of the grand estate. I turned to my mother one last time. You wanted an elite experience, Mother. Welcome to the hostile takeover. Mr. Henderson stepped onto the stage with the precision of a man who billed $1,200 an hour. He was impeccable in his charcoal suit, holding a leather briefcase that looked like it contained nuclear codes. He did not look at the guests. He did not look at the paramedics working on my father. He walked straight to me and placed the briefcase on the podium. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said. He nodded once. The documents are ready for review, Ms. Hamilton. The transfer of title was recorded with the county clerk 6 months ago. The foreclosure on the previous owner was finalized, and the acquisition by SH Holdings is absolute. I placed my hand on the leather case. It felt cool to the touch. My mother was staring at the lawyer and then at me. Her face was a mask of confusion. SH Holdings, she whispered. I saw that name on the invitation. I saw it on the contract. Yes, Mother, I said, unlocking the case with a satisfying click. You did. You thought it stood for some faceless corporation. You thought it was some investment group from New York or London. I pulled out the deed. It was a heavy document with a gold seal at the bottom. I held it up for the room to see. SH Holdings. I said, my voice echoing in the silence. SH Sasha Hamilton. My mother let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. She stumbled back, grabbing the edge of the speaker to steady herself. No, she breathed. That is impossible. You live in a studio. You drive a Honda. I laughed. It was the same laugh I had suppressed for years while listening to them mock me at dinner tables. I drive a Honda because I do not need a car to prove my worth, I said. And I live in a studio in your imagination. In reality, I live in the penthouse of the building I own on Central Park West. And I own this estate. I own the land we are standing on. I own the walls you decorated. I own the roof over your head. I watched the realization hit her like a physical blow. The memories of the evening came flooding back to her. She remembered standing in the driveway. She remembered screaming at the valet. She remembered throwing my gift into the bushes. You told the valet to push my car into a ditch, she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. You told me to get off the property. Yes, I said, stepping closer to her. You kicked the owner off her own driveway. You told the landlord she was trespassing. Do you have any idea how ridiculous you looked, Mother? Do you have any idea how much the staff laughed at you behind your back? She looked around at the waiters and the security guards. They were all looking at me with respect. They knew. They had known all night. You knew, she accused, looking at Mr. Henderson. You let us humiliate ourselves. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. Miss Hamilton instructed us to allow the event to proceed. She wanted to give you a chance to celebrate your anniversary. She paid for the catering. She paid for the flowers. She even covered the insurance policy that your son-in-law failed to secure. My mother looked at Hunter. He was pressed against the wall, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the plaster. I walked over to the microphone stand. I had every intention of letting you have your night, I said, addressing the silent room. I was going to let you pretend for one more evening. I was going to let you eat my food and drink my wine and pretend you were the kings and queens of Atlanta. I looked at Elijah Sterling, who was watching me with a look of intense approval. But then I said, my voice hardening, "You broke the rules." I picked up a copy of the rental agreement from the briefcase. Section 14, paragraph B, I read aloud. The renter agrees to conduct themselves with dignity and respect toward all guests and staff. Any behavior deemed abusive, fraudulent, or insulting to VIP guests is grounds for immediate termination of the contract. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor, landing next to the broken glass. Hunter insulted Mr. Sterling, I said, pointing at the cowering man. He tried to defraud him. He lied to him. And then he insulted me, the owner of this establishment. I looked at my mother. And you, mother, you assaulted the owner. You tried to strike me. My mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup completely. Sasha, please. We are family. You cannot do this. Your father is sick. We have nowhere to go. I looked at my father on the stretcher. The paramedics were strapping him in. He was conscious now, looking at me with weak, pleading eyes. The house is gone, he wheezed. Hunter lost the house. I know, I said. And now this house is gone too. I pulled out my phone. I opened the smart home control app. The interface glowed blue on my screen. I looked at the crowd. I suggest everyone make their way to the exits immediately, I announced. The property is being secured. Sasha. My mother screamed, reaching out for me. Don't do this. Please, we are sorry. We love you. I looked at her one last time. No, you don't, I said. You love the access I can give you. You love the status. But you hate me. And frankly, the feeling is mutual. I tapped the button on my screen labeled Master Power. Instantly, the massive crystal chandeliers overhead went dark. The stage lights cut out. The music system powered down. The only light left came from the emergency exit signs, casting a harsh red glow over the ruined party. The ballroom was plunged into shadows. My mother's scream was cut short by the darkness. The party is over, I said into the silence. Get out. The red emergency lights bathed the ballroom in a sinister crimson glow, turning the terrified faces of the guests into ghostly masks. The silence I had commanded was broken only by the sound of heavy boots hitting the marble floor of the foyer. It was a rhythmic, thundering sound, like a marching army. My mother Linda was still clutching the sleeve of my father's tuxedo as the paramedics tried to stabilize him on the stretcher. She looked at the main doors, expecting to see hotel security, or maybe the local police coming to escort me out for trespassing. She expected a couple of uniformed officers she could bully or bribe. But when the double doors flew open for the second time that night, it was not local security. 6 men and women stormed into the room. They were not wearing police uniforms. They were wearing navy blue windbreakers with bold yellow letters emblazoned across the chest and back. FBI. Behind them were 2 men in sharp gray suits carrying briefcases. I recognized the insignia on their lapel pins. The Securities and Exchange Commission. The room erupted into chaos. Guests who had been lingering near the exit trying to eavesdrop suddenly scrambled to get out of the way, knocking over chairs and spilling drinks. No one wanted to be in the frame when federal agents conducted a raid. Hunter Davis saw them coming. For a split second, a look of relief washed over his face. In his delusional, narcissistic mind, he actually thought they were here for me. He thought his lies about my mental health and my violent behavior had actually worked. He thought I was the villain who had hijacked the venue, and he was the victim who needed rescuing. Over here, Hunter screamed, waving his arms frantically. Thank God you are here. Officer over here. He pointed a shaking finger directly at me. "She is the one you want," Hunter shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "That woman in the red dress. She is trespassing. She hacked the systems. She is holding us hostage. Arrest her. Get her out of my sight." The lead FBI agent, a tall woman with eyes like steel, did not even look at me. She did not break her stride. She walked right past the spot where I was standing. She walked past my mother, who was shrinking back against the wall. She walked past the stretcher where my father was groaning. She walked straight to Hunter. Hunter's smile faltered. He lowered his hand. "Wait," he stammered. "What are you doing?" "She is over there." The agent stopped inches from his face. She reached into her belt and pulled out a pair of heavy steel handcuffs. The metallic click as she unlatched them echoed through the silent room. "Hunter Davis," she said, her voice loud and authoritative. Hunter blinked. "Yes, I am the victim here." "You are under arrest," the agent announced. Hunter laughed. It was a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "Arrest? You are joking. For what?" "Being successful. Being attacked by a crazy woman. You are under arrest for 18 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of money laundering, and 4 counts of aggravated identity theft," the agent recited. She spun him around. She did not do it gently. She grabbed his shoulder and twisted him, slamming his chest against the wall next to the stage. Hunter shrieked. "You are making a mistake. Do you know who I am? My father-in-law is Byron Hamilton. We are elite. You have the right to remain silent." The agent continued, pulling his arms behind his back. "I suggest you use it." The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting tight around his wrists was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. Click, click, click. The reality finally hit him. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a dream. This was federal prison, and just like I predicted, the cowardice set in. He did not call for a lawyer. He did not ask for his wife. He looked for a scapegoat. He twisted his head around, looking frantically for Chloe, who was standing near the edge of the stage, sobbing into her hands. "Chloe," he screamed. "Chloe, tell them it was your idea." Chloe froze. She lowered her hands slowly, her mascara running down her face in black rivulets. "What?" she whispered. "Tell them," Hunter shouted, struggling against the agent's grip. "You are the one who wanted the lifestyle. You are the one who needed the trips to Maui. You are the one who demanded the Birkin bags. I did this for you." He looked at the agents, his eyes wide and manic. "It was her," he pleaded. "My wife. She pressured me. She made me open those accounts. She stole her sister's identity. I just tried to cover for her. I am the victim here. She is the mastermind." "Arrest her too." The room gasped. It was the ultimate betrayal. The golden child's husband, the man they had paraded around as the savior of the family, was throwing his wife to the wolves to save his own skin. Chloe looked at him. For 10 years she had worshipped this man. She had defended him against me. She had mocked me for being single while she had the perfect marriage. And now, in the harsh red light of the emergency exit signs, she saw him for what he truly was. A rat. You liar," Chloe screamed. Her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the hardwood floor, her pink dress billowing around her like a wilted flower. She curled into a ball, sobbing uncontrollably. The sound was guttural and raw. It was the sound of a woman whose entire identity had just been incinerated. My mother Linda watched it all happen. She stood there like a statue, frozen in horror. She looked at her husband on the stretcher, bankrupt and broken. She looked at her daughter on the floor, humiliated and potentially facing charges. She looked at her son-in-law, the man she had loved more than her own daughter, being dragged away in handcuffs. She looked around the room. Her friends, the people she had tried so hard to impress, were watching with expressions of pure pity and disgust. They were not looking at a high society matriarch. They were looking at a fool who had been conned by a cheap suit and a fake smile. She had lost her money. She had lost her house. She had lost her reputation. And now she had lost her pride. She looked at me, standing alone in the center of the room, untouched. the red dress vibrant against the shadows. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply watched. The agents began to march Hunter toward the exit. He was still screaming, still blaming everyone but himself. My mother stood paralyzed. She did not run after him. She did not comfort Chloe. She just stood there alone in the ruins of her vanity. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was warm and firm. I turned to see Elijah Sterling standing beside me. He looked at the scene, the weeping sister, the arrested fraud, the broken parents, and then he looked at me. There was no pity in his eyes, only respect. "Clean sweep," Sterling said quietly. I nodded. "The trash has been taken out." He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that matched mine. "Well, Ms. Hamilton," he said, offering me his arm, "the show is over, and unless you want to stick around to give a statement to the local police about your sister's credit card fraud, I suggest we leave." He gestured toward the side exit where his security team was waiting. "We have a plane to catch," Sterling said. "The jet is fueled and waiting at Teterboro. We need to be in Davos by morning. The Asian markets open in 4 hours, and I need my chief strategist to review the acquisition targets." I looked back at my family one last time. The paramedics were wheeling my father out. My mother was kneeling beside Chloe, trying to touch her shoulder, but Chloe slapped her hand away, screaming, "Don't touch me!" They were a portrait of misery, a masterpiece of self-destruction. I turned my back on them. I took Elijah Sterling's arm. "Let us go," I said. I walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking on the marble, my head held high. I did not look back. I did not say goodbye. I walked out of the darkness and into the night, leaving the ghosts of my past to haunt the empty halls of the house I owned. The night air outside the grand estate was cool and crisp, a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat and tension of the ballroom. I walked down the stone steps of the main entrance, taking a deep breath of oxygen that tasted like freedom. Behind me, the chaotic sounds of the ruined party were fading. The sirens of the FBI vehicles transporting Hunter to the Federal Detention Center were drifting away into the distance, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. My heels clicked rhythmically on the pavement. Beside me, Elijah Sterling walked with the easy stride of a man who had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. His security detail formed a protective phalanx around us, guiding us toward the waiting Rolls-Royce Phantom that sat idling at the curb like a sleek black beast. I was halfway to the car when I heard the sound. It was the sound of desperate footsteps scrambling against the gravel. It was the sound of heavy, panicked breathing. "Sasha. Sasha, wait." I stopped. I did not turn around immediately. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the voice wash over me. For 30 years that voice had commanded me. It had criticized me. It had told me I was not thin enough, not smart enough, not successful enough. It was the voice of my mother Linda, but it sounded different now. It lacked the sharp edge of authority. It was broken. I turned slowly. My parents were running toward me. They looked like refugees from a war zone. My mother's gold sequined dress was torn at the hem, where she had likely snagged it in her haste. Her mascara was smeared across her cheeks in dark, jagged lines, giving her the appearance of a weeping clown. One of her expensive earrings was missing. And my father, Byron Hamilton, the man who prided himself on his dignity, was stumbling along beside her. He had refused the ambulance. I could see the stubborn pride in his eyes, even as he clutched his chest, his face pale and sweating. He knew he could not afford the hospital bill. He knew his insurance was likely tied to the fraudulent accounts Hunter had set up. So he was here dragging his failing heart across the pavement, desperate for a lifeline. They stopped a few feet away from me, panting heavily. The security guards stepped forward to block them, but I raised a hand signaling them to stand down. I wanted to hear this. "Sasha," my mother gasped, reaching out a hand as if to touch me. I took a step back, moving just out of her reach. "What do you want, Mother?" I asked. My voice was devoid of emotion. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was simply tired. My mother looked at me. She looked at the diamonds in my ears. She looked at the red Versace dress. And then she looked past me at the Rolls-Royce where Elijah Sterling was waiting by the open door. The calculation in her eyes was instant. I watched her switch masks in real time. The vitriol and hatred she had spewed at me in the ballroom vanished. In its place, she plastered on a look of tragic victimhood. Her lower lip trembled. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Oh, Sasha," she sobbed, clasping her hands together in a prayer motion. "Thank God we caught you. It is a nightmare, Sasha. A complete nightmare." She took a step closer, ignoring my body language. "We were tricked," she cried, her voice rising in pitch. "You have to believe us. We did not know. Hunter deceived us. He lied to your father. He stole our money. He ruined us, Sasha. We are victims just like you." I stared at her. "Just like me." She continued, gaining momentum. "We are destitute. The bank is going to take the house tomorrow. We have nowhere to go. Your father needs medication. We have no cash. They froze the accounts." She looked at my father, nudging him. "Tell her, Byron. Tell her we need help." My father looked at me. The shame in his eyes was deep, but his survival instinct was stronger. "Sasha," he wheezed, his voice a shadow of its former boom. We made a mistake. We trusted the wrong person, but we are family. You cannot leave us like this." My mother nodded vigorously. "Exactly. We are family. Blood is thicker than water, baby. We forgive you." I blinked. "You forgive me?" "Yes," she said eagerly. "We forgive you for the scene inside. We know you were just trying to protect us. You are a good daughter. You have always been the smart one. We see that now." She reached out again, and this time she managed to grab my hand. Her palms were clammy. "Look at you," she said, squeezing my fingers. "You are so successful. You are rich, Sasha. You own this estate. You have millions. You can fix this. You can call the bank. You can buy back the house. You can set us up in a nice apartment until this blows over." She smiled, a grotesque, desperate smile. "We can start over," she said. "You, me, Dad, and Chloe. A real family. We will treat you with the respect you deserve now. We promise." I looked down at her hand covering mine. I thought about the Thanksgiving dinners where she made me sit at the kids' table. I thought about the way she laughed when Hunter made fun of my car. I thought about the text message she sent me 5 hours ago. I gently pulled my hand away. My mother's smile faltered. "Sasha." I looked at her. I really looked at her. And for the first time in my life, I did not see a giant. I did not see a matriarch. I saw a small, sad woman who had built her house on sand and was surprised when the tide came in. I felt a wave of pity wash over me. It was not the warm pity of compassion. It was the cold, distant pity one feels for a wounded animal that cannot be saved. "You are right, Mother," I said softly. "I do have millions. I could buy your house back 10 times over without blinking. I could pay off your debts. I could hire the best lawyers for Chloe. I could fix everything." Hope flared in her eyes. It was blinding. "Oh, thank you, Sasha. Thank you. I knew you loved us. But I am not going to," I said. The hope died, instantly strangled by the silence that followed. What she whispered. "Why? We are family." I shook my head. "No," I said. "We are relatives. We share DNA. But we are not family." I took a step back, creating a chasm between us that no amount of money could bridge. "Family does not tell you to enter through the service door," I said, my voice steady. "Family does not throw your gifts in the bushes. Family does not tell you to hide because you are not elite enough to be seen." My mother flinched. That was just stress, Sasha. We didn't mean it. You meant every word I said. You told me the rules, Mother. You set the standard. You said this world was only for the elite. You said I didn't belong." I smoothed the silk of my dress. "And you were right," I continued. "I don't belong in your world. Your world is small. It is petty. It is built on lies and debt and the desperate need to impress people who do not care about you. I looked at my father. I built my own world, Dad. A world where value is based on competence, not appearances. A world where loyalty is earned, not demanded. Sasha, please, my father begged, a tear rolling down his cheek. Do not do this. Do not leave us here. We have nothing. I looked at the empty parking lot. I looked at the dark mansion behind them. You have exactly what you invested in, I said. You invested in Hunter. You invested in appearances. This is your return on investment. I turned toward the car. Sasha, my mother screamed, the mask falling away completely, returning to the shrieking banshee I knew so well. You ungrateful witch! You cannot walk away. You owe us. We raised you. I stopped. I turned my head slightly, but I did not look at her. You didn't raise me, I said. You tolerated me. And now my tolerance has run out. I walked to the car. Elijah Sterling held the door open for me. He looked at my parents with a gaze that was harder than diamond. He did not say a word to them. He simply waited for me to enter the sanctuary of his world. I slid into the leather seat. The smell of expensive leather and conditioned air surrounded me. It smelled like peace. Sasha, my mother, was running now, stumbling in her broken heels. Sasha opened the window. Listen to me. We are your parents. I looked at her through the thick, bulletproof glass. She was banging on the window now, her face distorted, her mouth opening and closing in silent screams. Elijah Sterling got in beside me. He looked at the driver. Go, he said. The driver nodded. The engine of the Rolls-Royce purred to life. It was a deep, powerful rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. As the car began to move, I watched my parents. They stood there in the middle of the empty parking lot. Two small figures illuminated by the red taillights of the car. They looked shrinking. They looked fading. My mother was still screaming, but I could not hear her. My father had slumped against a lamppost, his head in his hands. I watched them until the car turned the corner, and the trees swallowed them up. I sat back in the seat. I took a deep breath. My chest felt lighter than it had in years. The knot of anxiety that had lived in my stomach since I was a child was gone. Are you okay? Sterling asked quietly. I looked at him. I looked at the city lights of Atlanta passing by in a blur of gold and silver. I thought about the empty apartment waiting for them. I thought about the lawsuits. I thought about the lonely, bitter years ahead of them. And then I thought about my penthouse. I thought about my freedom. I thought about the future that was wide open and entirely mine. I picked up my phone. I opened the contact list. I found the group chat labeled The Hamilton Legacy. I pressed delete. Then I blocked the numbers. One by one. Mother, father, Chloe. I looked at Sterling and smiled. A real smile. I am better than okay, I said. I am free. The car accelerated, merging onto the highway, speeding toward the private airfield where a jet was waiting to take us to Davos. We were ascending. We were leaving the ground. We were going to a place where the air was thin and rare. We were going where only the elites could go. And this time, I had the only ticket that mattered. It has been exactly 6 months since the lights went out at the Grand Estate. I am currently sitting on the terrace of a private chalet in Davos, Switzerland. The air up here is thin and incredibly crisp. It tastes like snow and pine and old money. Below me, the little town sparkles like a jewelry box against the white slopes of the Alps. I have just finished signing a consulting contract with the G7 Summit to advise on global digital infrastructure. The ink is still wet on the page. The fee for this one project is more than my father made in his entire banking career. I pick up my porcelain cup of tea. It is quiet here, peaceful. But sometimes in the silence, I think about where everyone else is. Hunter Davis is currently residing in Cell Block C of the Federal Correctional Institution in Jessup, Georgia. He took a plea deal to avoid a 20-year sentence, but he still got 10 years for wire fraud and money laundering. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he is not doing well. The other inmates do not care about his proprietary algorithms or his fake Porsche. He spends his days working in the prison laundry folding sheets for 12 cents an hour. The man who wanted to be a king is now washing the dirty linens of strangers. My sister Chloe avoided prison time barely. Because she testified against Hunter, and because I chose not to press charges for the credit card fraud she got off with probation and community service. But the court ordered her to pay restitution. Every cent she stole has to be paid back. Last I heard, she is working as a cashier at a discount grocery store on the outskirts of Atlanta. She wears a polyester smock with a name tag that she hates. She spends her days scanning coupons for tired mothers and bagging cheap produce. I wonder if she thinks about the Birkin bags while she is asking customers if they want paper or plastic. I wonder if she misses the fake life she built, or if she is finally learning the value of earning a real dollar. And then there are my parents, Byron and Linda Hamilton, the couple who only wanted elites at their table. The foreclosure on their house was swift. The bank took everything: the furniture, the cars, the art, even the clothes. They are currently living in a one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood they used to make fun of. My father is recovering from his heart attack, but he is a broken man. He sits in a recliner watching daytime television, staring at the wall, wondering where it all went wrong. My mother works part-time as a receptionist at a dental clinic. She answers phones for $15 an hour. The high society friends she tried so hard to impress have all blocked her number. They do not invite her to galas anymore. To them, she is a cautionary tale, a ghost. My phone buzzes on the table, shaking me from my thoughts. I look down. It is a text message. The number is not saved in my contacts because I deleted it months ago, but I recognize the area code. I open the message. It is from my mother. Sasha, please, it has been 6 months. We miss you. Your father is depressed. We barely have enough for rent this month. Please just answer us. We are sorry. We are still your family. I stare at the words. 6 months ago, a message like this might have made me cry. It might have made me feel guilty. It might have made me want to drive over there and fix everything just to prove that I was good enough. But I am not that woman anymore. That woman died the moment she realized her mother cared more about a party aesthetic than her daughter's feelings. I do not feel anger. I do not feel sadness. I simply feel nothing. It is the indifference of a stranger reading a wrong number text. They do not miss me. They miss the ATM. They miss the status. They miss the safety net. I do not reply. I do not type out a long explanation of why they are wrong. I do not ask how they are doing. I press 2 buttons. Delete. Block. The message vanishes. The connection is severed. I put the phone down and look back out at the mountains. The sun is setting, casting a golden glow over the snow. My mother was right about one thing. This world is for the elites. But she got the definition wrong. Elite is not about the clothes you wear or the car you lease or the lies you tell to impress people who hate you. Elite is about the truth. It is about the power to stand on your own 2 feet without needing to stand on someone else's neck. It is about knowing exactly who you are when the lights go out and the music stops. They wanted the glitter. I gave them the gold. They wanted the performance. I gave them the reality. And now, as I sit here in the silence of my own success, I realize that the best revenge was not the lawsuit. It was not the foreclosure. It was not the arrest. The best revenge is that I am happy, I am whole, and I am entirely free. They wanted a story for the history books. Well, I gave them one. I take a sip of my tea and smile. This story teaches us that your value is never defined by the people who cannot afford to pay attention to your worth. Sasha's family built their lives on the fragile foundation of appearances, prioritizing the perception of wealth over the reality of love and integrity. They treated their most valuable asset, their daughter, as a liability because she didn't fit their aesthetic. The ultimate lesson is that true power comes from competence, independence, and the courage to walk away from toxicity even when it shares your DNA. You cannot buy class, and you certainly cannot fake character. If you are currently building your empire in silence, while others make noise if you are the black sheep who is actually the goat, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that the best revenge is not just surviving, but thriving so brightly that the people who doubted you have to wear shades just to look at you. Keep building, your time is coming.